She volunteered to end the dying vampire king's life, revenge for the family he destroyed. But when she stood over him, chained and broken, she made a different choice. She decided to keep him alive just long enough to make him suffer. What she didn't know, he would remember her face, her scent, and the bitterness in every drop of blood she fed him. The monastery smelled like death and holy water. Nora pressed a cloth soaked in vinegar against her nose as she descended the stone steps into the lower cells. Above her, she could hear the last of the soldiers loading their wagons, eager to leave this cursed place behind. The war was over. The vampires had lost. And now, cleanup duty fell to people like her, the ones nobody would miss if things went wrong. Cell 7. The captain had told her that morning, shoving an iron key into her palm. The thing down there is half dead already. Just make sure it doesn't wake up. Use this. He placed a wooden stake beside the key. Through the heart. Quick and clean. The thing. As if the vampire king himself was just another pest to be exterminated. Nora's boots echoed against the wet stone. The torches along the walls had burned low, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. She'd volunteered for this duty. Begged for it, actually. When she'd heard the rumors 3 days ago that Raviel, the vampire king, was being held in the monastery's dungeon, her heart had nearly stopped. This was the moment she'd waited 8 years for. The key turned with a grinding screech. The cell door swung open, and the smell hit her like a fist. Rot, blood, and something else. Something ancient. He was chained to the far wall. Nora stepped inside, her medical bag heavy on her shoulder. Her hand trembled as she raised the lantern. Raviel looked nothing like the monster from the stories. He was tall, even slumped against his chains. She could tell he would tower over most men. His hair was black as ink, matted with dried blood. His clothes, once fine, hung in tatters. But it was his face that made her breath catch. Sharp cheekbones. A jaw that could have been carved from marble. And his eyes. They were open. Silver eyes that caught the lamplight and reflected it back like a wolf's. Come to finish it? His voice was rough, barely above a whisper.
Good.
I'm tired of waiting. Nora said nothing. She set down her lantern and studied him with clinical detachment. His left arm hung at an unnatural angle, broken. Deep gashes crossed his chest, still seeping. Someone had carved symbols into his skin, probably to weaken him. Silver poisoning, she noted. His veins showed dark beneath pale skin. He was dying. Slowly. Painfully.
Perfect.
What are you waiting for? Raviel's head lolled forward. Afraid I'll bite. Nora reached into her bag. Her fingers closed around bandages instead of the stake. She moved closer, and he tensed.
Don't, he said.
Don't waste your supplies on. She grabbed his broken arm and reset the bone with one sharp movement. Raviel's scream echoed off the stone walls. When his breathing steadied, his silver eyes fixed on her with something like confusion.
Why?
Nora began wrapping his arm, her movements efficient. Because, she said softly, I want you to live. A bitter laugh escaped him.
Merciful humans.
How unexpected. I'm not merciful, she met his gaze, and something dark flickered across her face.
I'm practical.
You're no use to me dead. She worked in silence, cleaning wounds that would have killed a human 10 times over. Raviel watched her through half-closed eyes, too weak to question, too curious to look away. When she pulled out a small knife, he didn't even flinch. Nora made a shallow cut across her palm. Blood welled up, dark red in the lamplight. What are you? She pressed her hand against his cracked lips. Raviel tried to turn away, but her other hand gripped his jaw with surprising strength. Drink, she commanded.
Or die.
I don't care which, but choose now. The smell of her blood was overwhelming.
Sweet. Alive.
Everything his body screamed for. Against his will, his mouth opened. The first drop touched his tongue, and instinct took over. He drank. Not much, she pulled away after a few seconds, but enough. Enough to feel his wounds begin to close, just slightly. Enough to remember what strength felt like. When she released him, Raviel slumped back against the chains. "You're insane," he whispered. "Feeding a vampire. They'll execute you if they find out." "They won't find out." Nora bandaged her hand with quick, practiced movements. "Everyone thinks you're dead or close enough. I'm just supposed to make sure." She picked up her bag. "I'll be back tomorrow night. Maybe the night after. Depends on the patrols."
Why?
The question came out desperate. "Why would you save me?" Nora paused at the cell door. In the lamplight, her face looked young, 25, maybe 26. Pretty in a plain way, with brown hair tied back and eyes that had seen too much. But when she smiled, something cold crept into her expression. "Because 8 years ago, you killed someone I loved," she said simply. "And I want you to understand what it feels like to be helpless, to beg for mercy and receive none, to know you're going to die, slowly, with no one coming to save you." Raviel stared at her. "Then why heal me at all?" "Because death is too quick." Nora's smile widened. "I'm going to keep you alive, Vampire King. I'm going to heal every wound, feed you just enough to survive, and watch you suffer in this cell until you understand what you took from me. Only then will I let you die." She walked out, and the door slammed shut behind her. In the darkness, Raviel closed his silver eyes. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Vampire King felt something he'd forgotten existed. Fear. 3 days passed like a fever dream. Nora returned each night, always after midnight when the few remaining monks had retired to their quarters. She brought clean water, herbs that masked the smell of infection, and her blood, measured out in careful doses, never enough to fully restore him, but always enough to keep death at bay. Raviel learned to anticipate her footsteps. The soft scuff of worn boots on stone. The jingle of keys she'd stolen from the captain's office. The click of the lock that meant another night of humiliation. She never spoke during the feedings. Just made the cut, pressed her wrist to his mouth, and counted silently to 10. Then she'd pull away and tend to his other wounds with the detached efficiency of someone treating a sick dog. On the 4th night, he finally broke the silence. "What was their name?" Nora's hands paused over the gash on his ribs. "What?" "The person I killed. You said I took someone from you." Raviel's voice had grown stronger, though his body remained weak. "What was their name?" "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound.
Why?
"So you can add them to your list? Tell me which of the thousands you slaughtered was mine." Her fingers dug into his wound, and he hissed in pain. "You probably don't even remember. Just another human. Just another body." Raviel was quiet for a long moment. "You're right," he said finally. "I don't remember them all. But I remember the ones who fought back. The ones who screamed. The ones who begged." He lifted his head, silver eyes meeting hers. "Tell me. Maybe I'll remember your pain." Nora's hand trembled. For a moment, he thought she might strike him. Instead, she reached for her knife. "You're healing too quickly," she said, changing the subject. "I need to adjust the dose." But this time, when she cut her palm, she squeezed harder. More blood flowed, dripping onto the stone floor between them. Wasted. Raviel's throat tightened at the sight. The hunger was always there now, a constant ache. "Please," he whispered. Nora froze. "What did you say?" "Please." The word tasted like ash. "Don't waste it." She knelt in front of him, bringing her bleeding hand close enough to smell, but not to reach. "Is this what you wanted?" The great Vampire King, begging a human for scraps? Yes, there was no pride left in him.
Yes.
"This is what you wanted." Something flickered across her face, satisfaction, maybe, or triumph. But underneath it, Raviel saw something else. Something that looked almost like disappointment. She let him drink. That night, as she cleaned the blood from his chin with a rag, Raviel spoke again. "I remember a hunter," he said quietly. "About 8 years ago, during the siege of Blackwater. He wore a silver amulet shaped like a wolf. Fought like a demon. Killed 17 of my soldiers before I reached him, he paused. I broke his neck.
Quick.
He didn't suffer. The rag fell from Nora's hand. How did you? Your eyes, Raviel's gaze was steady. Same color. Same shape. And the way you fight your hatred, I can taste it in your blood. Bitter. Like you're poisoning yourself from the inside, he tilted his head. He was your father. Nora stood abruptly, backing toward the door. Her face had gone pale. You're wrong. Am I? My father was, he died of fever. Years before the war. I'm just a nurse. I've always been just a nurse, but her voice cracked on the last word. Raviel watched her carefully. Then why feed me at all? Why not let me rot? I told you. I want you to suffer. No, he leaned forward as far as his chains allowed. You want something else. Something you haven't admitted yet, even to yourself. You don't know anything about me. I know you're lying. To me, and to yourself, his voice softened. I know you hate me. I know you should hate me. But I also know that every night, you risk your life to keep me alive, and it's not just about revenge anymore. Shut up, Nora grabbed her bag, her hands shaking. You don't get to analyze me. You don't get to pretend you understand. Then tell me I'm wrong. Look me in the eye and tell me your father didn't wear a wolf amulet. Tell me he's not the reason you're here. Nora's jaw clenched. For a long moment, she stood there, trembling with rage or grief or something in between. Finally, she whispered, I hope you live forever in this cell. Then she was gone, and the darkness swallowed Raviel once more. But this time he smiled, because now he understood.
She didn't want him to die.
She wanted him to care that he'd lived. The nightmare always started the same way. Nora was 16 again, hiding in the cellar while the world burned above her. She could hear her father's voice shouting orders, the clash of steel, the inhuman shrieks of vampires as they tore through Blackwater's defenses. Then silence. Then footsteps descending the stairs. She woke gasping, her sheets soaked with sweat. The small room above the monastery's kitchen felt suffocating. Moonlight streamed through the narrow window, and for a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered. The cell. Raviel. The truth he'd pulled from her like a splinter. Her father's amulet sat on the table beside her bed, a silver wolf, worn smooth from years of handling. She'd worn it every day since his death until 3 nights ago. Now she couldn't bear to look at it. He knew, she whispered to the empty room. How did he know? But she knew the answer. Raviel had lived for centuries. He'd seen thousands die, killed hundreds himself. He could read people the way she read wounds, seeing beneath the surface to the rot underneath. And he'd seen right through her. Nora dressed quickly and slipped into the night. The monastery grounds were quiet except for crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. She should go back to sleep. Should stay away from the dungeon tonight. But her feet carried her down the familiar path. The cell door creaked open. Raviel looked up, and something like relief crossed his face. I thought you wouldn't come. I shouldn't have. Nora set down her bag harder than necessary. But you're probably infected by now. Can't have you dying before I'm ready. Of course. How practical of you. She ignored the sarcasm and began her examination. His wounds were healing, too slowly for a healthy vampire, but faster than they should given his weakened state. Her blood was working. The thought made her stomach turn. Tell me about him, Raviel said quietly.
No.
Please. Nora's hand stilled. Why do you care? Because you're keeping me alive to punish me for his death. The least I can do is know who he was. Raviel's silver eyes were steady. And because I'm starting to think you need to talk about him more than I need to know. Something in Nora's chest cracked. She sat back on her heels, her defenses crumbling. His name was Marcus Webb, she said finally. He wasn't supposed to be a hunter. He was a carpenter. Made furniture, toys for children. Her voice went soft. But when the vampires came, when they started taking people from the villages, he couldn't just build tables and pretend it wasn't happening. Raviel listened in silence. He taught himself to fight, studied vampire lore, learned about silver and holy water and all the weaknesses your kind tried to hide. Other hunters laughed at him, called him the carpenter playing soldier. A sad smile touched her lips. But he saved more people than any of them. Entire families owe their lives to my father. The wolf amulet, Raviel said. What did it mean? His mother gave it to him. She said wolves protect their pack, no matter the cost. Nora's hand drifted to her neck, feeling the absence of the familiar weight. He wore it every hunt, said it reminded him why he fought. And you became a nurse. I became a nurse because I spent my childhood stitching him back together. Bitterness crept into her voice. Every time he came home bleeding, every broken bone, every close call, I learned. I had to. Because one day, I knew he wouldn't come home at all. Blackwater, Raviel said. Blackwater. Nora's eyes glistened. They told me he died a hero, that he saved 50 people before. Before you, she couldn't finish. Before I killed him. Yes. Raviel was quiet for a long moment. I remember him better now. The way he moved, trained but not elegant. Self-taught, he closed his eyes. He almost took my head off. Came closer than most. If he'd been vampire-born, he might have succeeded. Don't, Nora's voice broke. Don't try to make it better by saying he was brave. I know he was brave. I know he was good. And you killed him anyway. I did. Why? The question burst out of her. Why did you have to take Blackwater? Why did you have to start that war? What did we ever do to you? Raviel opened his eyes, and for the first time, she saw something unexpected there. Regret. Because I was a king, he said simply. And kings believe their thrones are worth more than lives. Worth more than fathers who become hunters. Worth more than daughters who become orphans, he held her gaze. I was wrong. Nora stared at him, shocked into silence. That's not what monsters say. No, Raviel agreed. It's what monsters learn. Eventually, when it's far too late, the attack came on the 7th night. Nora was cleaning Raviel's wrists where the silver chains had burned through skin when she heard it. The crash of breaking glass from somewhere above, followed by rough voices and laughter. Raiders, Raviel said, his head snapping up. His weakened senses still caught what she couldn't. 5, maybe 6. Looking for valuables. They know the monastery's been abandoned. Nora's heart hammered. The monks. Left yesterday. You're the only one here. His chains rattled as he tensed. You need to run.
Now.
But her feet wouldn't move. The voices were getting closer, boots stomping through the chapel above. Breaking things. Searching. Someone check below, a man shouted. Churches always hide their gold in the crypts. Footsteps thundered toward the stairwell. Nora, Raviel's voice was urgent.
The key.
Give it to me. What? Unchain me, or we both die. Choose. Her hands shook as she fumbled for the key. Every instinct screamed this was insane, freeing a vampire, even a weakened one. But the footsteps were getting closer, and she could hear blades being drawn. The chains fell away. Raviel collapsed forward, catching himself on his hands. 7 days of silver poisoning and starvation had left him barely able to stand. He looked up at her, silver eyes fierce despite his weakness. The crypts. Behind that wall, there's a passage. Go. What about you? I'll buy you time. You can barely walk. A savage smile crossed his face. I don't need to walk to be dangerous. The cell door burst open. 3 men poured in, weapons drawn, a mixture of swords and crude axes. They froze when they saw Raviel standing there, chains pooled at his feet. 7 hells, 1 breathed. That's the Vampire King, Raviel finished. His voice dropped to something ancient and terrible. And you've made a grave mistake. The men should have run. Instead, greed made them stupid. A Vampire King's head would bring a fortune, even a dying one. They attacked. Raviel moved like water despite his wounds. He caught the first man's sword arm, twisted, and the blade clattered away. But he was too slow, too weak. The second raider's axe caught him across the ribs, and he stumbled. Nora screamed as blood sprayed across the stone. The raiders laughed. Not so tough now, are you, leech? Something inside Nora snapped. She grabbed the fallen sword and swung it with all her strength. The blade bit into the raider's shoulder, and he howled in pain. Run! Raviel roared at her, grappling with two men at once. Damn you, woman, run! But she wouldn't. The wounded raider lunged at her with a dagger. Nora tried to dodge, but her medical bag caught on a chain. She stumbled, and the blade arced toward her throat. Raviel was there. She didn't see him move. One moment he was across the cell, the next he was between her and the dagger. The blade meant for her throat punched through his chest instead. Time stopped. The raider's eyes went wide as Raviel's hand closed around his neck. You hurt her, Raviel whispered, and there was death in his voice. He squeezed, and something crunched. The other raiders ran. Raviel collapsed against the wall, the dagger still embedded in his chest. Dark blood, almost black, poured from the wound. No, Nora caught him before he fell, lowering him to the ground. Her hands moved automatically, assessing the damage. The blade had missed his heart by inches, but the wound was deep. Too deep. Stupid, she gasped, pressing her hands against the bleeding. You stupid. Why did you do that? Raviel's laugh came out wet. Wonder that myself. Old habits, his silver eyes found hers. You remind me of someone. Long time ago. Before I was. This. Don't talk. Save your strength. Nora, his hand covered hers, surprisingly warm despite the blood. You expected a monster. Hoped for one. Would have been easier, wouldn't it? To hate something that deserved it. Tears streamed down her face. Shut up. Just shut up and let me work. She pulled the dagger free and packed the wound with cloth from her bag. Her hands were steady even as her vision blurred. Years of practice. Years of saving her father, over and over, until the one time she couldn't. I dreamed of watching you beg, she whispered as she stitched. I wanted you broken, humiliated. I wanted you to feel what my father felt. And now... Her needle paused. Now I don't know what I want anymore. Raviel's eyes drifted closed. That's progress. Above them, the raiders' voices faded into the night. The monastery fell silent except for Nora's ragged breathing and the drip of blood on stone. She finished the stitches and sat back, exhausted. We need to leave, she said quietly, before they come back with more.
Can't.
Too weak. Then I'll carry you. His eyes opened in surprise.
Why?
Nora looked at him, really looked, at the creature who'd killed her father. The monster who'd just taken a blade meant for her. Because you saved me, she said simply. And I'm not done with you yet. They fled through the crypt passages as dawn approached. Nora half-carried, half-dragged Raviel through tunnels that hadn't seen light in decades. Her arms screamed in protest, but she didn't stop. Behind them, she could hear the raiders returning, more of them this time, their torches flickering against the ancient stone. Leave me, Raviel muttered. His skin had gone gray, cold as marble. You'll move faster alone. I didn't stitch you back together just to let you die in a tunnel. She adjusted her grip, pulling his arm tighter around her shoulders. Besides, you still owe me answers. Stubborn woman. Stubborn monster. Despite everything, he almost smiled. They emerged in an abandoned groundskeeper's cottage at the edge of the monastery grounds. Nora barricaded the door with what little furniture remained and laid Raviel on a rotting bed that groaned under his weight. The wound had reopened during their escape. Fresh blood seeped through the bandages. I need to feed you, she said, already reaching for her knife. You've lost too much blood. No, his hand caught her wrist. Not like this. You've given too much already. I can smell it, you're weakening. I don't care.
Ida.
They stared at each other in the dim light filtering through cracked shutters. Finally, Nora pulled free and made the cut anyway. Smaller this time, more careful. When she pressed her wrist to his lips, Raviel drank reluctantly, taking only what he needed. But this time, something changed. His eyes snapped open, silver irises focusing with sudden intensity. He pulled away sharply, staring at her. "Your blood," he said slowly. "It's different tonight." "What are you talking about?" "The bitterness. It's stronger." Sharper, he sat up despite his wounds, studying her face. "You're not just angry. You're terrified.
Of me.
Of yourself. Of what you're feeling." Nora turned away, busying herself with repacking her bag. "You're delirious. The silver poisoning." "Stop lying," his voice cut through her excuses. "I've tasted enough blood to know. Emotions flavor it like spices in wine. Yours has been bitter with hatred since the first night. But now there's something else. Something you're trying to hide. You don't know what you're talking about. Then look at me and tell me your name." She froze. "What? Your name? You've told me your father was Marcus Webb. Hunter. Carpenter. Hero." Raviel's gaze burned into her back. "But you've never told me yours." "Why is that, Nora?" The way he said her name, like he was tasting it, testing it, made her skin prickle. "It doesn't matter. It matters because you're lying about something. I just need to figure out what." He leaned forward, chains of logic clicking into place. "The wolf amulet. You said your father wore it every hunt. That his mother gave it to him." "She did." "Then why," Raviel said softly, "did I take it from a woman at Blackwater? A woman who fought like a demon when I tried to take a child from a burning house." The bag slipped from Nora's hands. "That's not, you're wrong. She had your eyes, your face. Older, but the resemblance was unmistakable." His voice was gentle now, almost apologetic. "She wore the amulet. She screamed at me to let the child go, offered herself in exchange. Said her husband had already fallen and she wouldn't let the vampires take her daughter too." "Stop," Nora's voice broke. "I let the child run. But the woman, your mother, she attacked me anyway. Tried to drive a stake through my heart. I didn't mean to kill her. The fire was spreading, the building was collapsing, and she wouldn't stop fighting." He paused. "I took the amulet as a reminder. Of the woman who loved her daughter more than her own life." Nora spun around, tears streaming down her face. "You killed them both. My father and my mother. You took everything from me." "I know." "Then why?" She couldn't finish, couldn't breathe. 8 years of grief crashed over her like a wave. "Why do I keep saving you? Why can't I just let you die?" Raviel stood slowly, painfully, and moved toward her. She should have run. Should have grabbed a weapon. Instead, she stood frozen as he stopped just inches away. "Because you're better than me," he said quietly. "Because despite everything I've done, every life I've taken, you saw something worth saving. Even when you wanted to hate me. Even when you should." "I do hate you." "I know." He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand brushed a tear from her cheek. "But you're starting to see me as something other than the monster who destroyed your life. And that terrifies you more than any vampire ever could." Nora's hands trembled against his chest. Whether to push him away or pull him closer, she didn't know. "What am I supposed to do?" she whispered. "Whatever you need to," Raviel said. "I won't stop you." Nora's palm cracked across Raviel's face. The sound echoed in the small cottage. He didn't flinch, didn't move, just stood there accepting her rage like penance. "You took everything," her voice shattered. "My father, my mother, my childhood, my future." She hit him again, fists pounding against his chest. "I was supposed to be a carpenter's daughter. I was supposed to be normal." Raviel caught her wrists gently. "I know. You don't know anything." She struggled against his grip, but he held firm, not hurting, just containing. "Do you have any idea what it's like? Watching everyone you love die? Being left behind, alone, with nothing but memories and hate." "Yes." His silver eyes met hers.
Ido.
Something in his tone made her pause. "What?" "I was human once. Had a family. A wife who laughed like summer rain. A daughter who collected flowers, his grip on her wrists loosened. I watched them die of plague while I was away at war. Came home to graves and ashes. Nora stared at him. You're lying. I wish I was. A bitter smile touched his lips. A vampire found me in the graveyard, half mad with grief. Offered me eternity. Promised I'd never feel that pain again. I was fool enough to believe him. And did it work? Did you stop feeling pain?
No.
I just learned to cause it instead. Raviel released her wrists and stepped back. Every person I killed, every village I burned, I told myself it didn't matter. That they were just humans. Temporary. Meaningless. He looked down at his blood-stained hands. But your mother's face haunts me. Your father's determination. All of them. Every single 1 inch. Then why do it? Why continue? Because stopping meant admitting what I'd become. Meant facing 3 centuries of guilt. His voice dropped to a whisper. It was easier to be a monster than to be a man who'd become one. Nora's anger drained away, leaving only exhaustion. She sank to the floor, her back against the wall. I wanted you to suffer. I wanted you to beg and break, and understand what you took from me. I do understand. More than you know. But it doesn't help. Tears slid down her cheeks. It doesn't bring them back. It doesn't fix anything. I'm just empty. Raviel knelt in front of her, moving carefully. Then let me go. Walk away. Find a life that isn't built on vengeance. I can't. Why not? Because... She looked up at him, helpless. Because somewhere between hating you and healing you, I forgot how to do either. You're a monster who saved my life. A killer who shows remorse. You're not supposed to be complicated. You're supposed to be easy to hate. I'm sorry I'm not. The absurdity of it, a vampire apologizing for being too human, made her laugh. The sound came out broken, half-sob. What do you want from me? She asked. Raviel was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for the knife at her belt, slowly, giving her time to stop him. When she didn't, he pressed the blade against his own wrist. What are you doing? Giving you a choice, he drew the knife across his skin. Dark blood welled up, spilling onto the wooden floor. End this. Take your revenge. I won't fight back. Nora stared at the bleeding wound. Stop. Or save me. One more time. But if you do, his eyes locked with hers. Admit it's not about revenge anymore. Admit you're choosing to keep me alive. You're insane. Probably his blood pooled between them. But I'm tired of pretending. Tired of watching you tear yourself apart trying to hate me when clearly part of you doesn't want it anymore. Nora's hands trembled as she watched him bleed. This was what she'd wanted, wasn't it? The vampire king, helpless before her. One choice away from death. Justice for her parents. So, why couldn't she let him die? Damn you, she whispered, grabbing her medical bag. Her hands moved automatically, cleaning, stitching, binding. Damn you for making this complicated. Damn you for having a conscience. Damn you for... For what? For making me care whether you live or die. The words hung in the air between them. Nora's hands stilled, the bandage half tied around his wrist. She'd said it. Finally admitted the truth that had been growing since that first night in the cell. Raviel's hand covered hers. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For your parents. For your pain. For being the monster who destroyed your life. If I could undo it, I would. But you can't.
No.
I can't, he squeezed her hand gently. But I can promise you'll never have to face danger alone again. For whatever that's worth. Outside, the raiders' torches flickered in the distance, searching. Dawn was coming. We need to run, Nora said, finishing the bandage. Together? She met his silver eyes. Together. They traveled for 3 days, always moving, never stopping long. The raiders had put a bounty on them, a vampire and the woman who freed him. 500 gold pieces. Enough to make every desperate soul in the region a hunter. By the time they reached the mountain chapel, Nora could barely stand. Just a little further, Raviel urged, supporting most of her weight. His strength had returned enough to walk, But she was fading. Too much blood given, too little sleep, too many miles on foot. The chapel sat nestled in a cliff face, abandoned for years. Inside, dust covered everything. Broken pews, a cracked altar, faded paintings of saints whose eyes seemed to judge them. Nora collapsed on the stone floor. Her vision swam. I just need a moment. Raviel knelt beside her, alarm sharp in his silver eyes. He pressed fingers to her throat, counting her pulse. Your heartbeat is wrong. Too slow.
Ai fine.
You're dying, his voice cracked. You've given me too much blood. Your body can't recover fast enough. Then we're even, she tried to smile. I kept you alive. You kept me safe. Good trade. Nora, this isn't a joke. I know, her eyes drifted closed. I'm just so tired. Panic flooded through Raviel. In 3 centuries, he'd watched countless humans die. It had never mattered before. They were brief candles, burning and fading. But this woman, this infuriating, compassionate, broken woman, she mattered. Stay awake, he commanded, patting her cheek. Look at me. Her eyes opened, unfocused. My parents. Do you think they'd forgive me? For saving you? Don't talk like that. I betrayed them. Betrayed their memory. For a monster. A tear slid down her temple. What kind of daughter does that make me? The best kind, Raviel said fiercely. The kind who chooses mercy over vengeance. Who sees beyond hate. They'd be proud of you. You didn't know them. I know you. That's enough. Her pulse weakened further. Raviel looked around desperately, but the chapel offered nothing.
No supplies.
No help. Just stone and shadows and a woman dying in his arms. There was only one way. No, he said aloud to himself. I swore I'd never create another. Never damn someone to this existence. But Nora's breathing grew shallow. Listen to me. He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to focus. I can save you. My blood, if you drink it, you'll survive. You'll heal. Vampire, she mumbled. You want to turn me? I don't want to. But I can't lose you, his voice broke.
Please.
Let me save you the way you saved me. Nora's head rolled to the side.
No, let me.
Go. I can't. Promise me. Her words were barely whisper.
Promise.
You'll find
peace.
Her eyes closed. Her chest stilled. No, Raviel shook her. No, you don't get to leave. Not after everything. Not after making me feel human again. Silence answered him. 3 centuries of control shattered. Raviel bit his own wrist savagely, tearing the vein open. Dark blood flowed freely. He forced her mouth open, pressed his wrist to her lips, and tilted her head back. Swallow, he commanded. Damn you, Nora, swallow. The blood trickled down her throat. For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then her body convulsed. Her back arched off the ground. Her eyes snapped open, no longer brown but flickering between brown and silver. Her hands clawed at his arm, not to push away but to pull closer, instinct taking over. She drank. Raviel held her through the transformation, whispering apologies.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. When she finally released his wrist, her breathing steadied. Color returned to her cheeks, not the flush of human life, but something else. Something eternal. Her eyes opened fully. Silver. Like his. What? Her voice sounded different. Sharper. What did you do? I saved you. Nora sat up slowly. Everything looked different. She could see dust motes floating in the air. Hear Raviel's heartbeat, slow, ancient. Smell the copper tang of blood from miles away. The raiders. Still hunting. I told you to let me die. I know. I'm not human anymore. I know. She looked down at her hands. The calluses from nursing were still there, but her skin seemed paler, smoother. When she touched the wall, the stone cracked under her fingertips. I'll never see sunlight again. Never grow old. Never, she trailed off, the weight of eternity crushing down. What have you made me? Raviel met her silver eyes. Something between what you were and what I am. I don't know if you'll forgive me. I don't know if I'll forgive myself. But you're alive. Am I? Nora's voice was hollow. Or did we both just die in different ways? Outside, dawn broke. The first rays of sunlight crept across the mountain, stopping just short of the chapel's entrance. A line they could never cross again. 6 weeks later, they found sanctuary in a coastal town called Mercy's End. The name felt like a cruel joke. The cottage they'd claimed sat at the edge of a cliff, overlooking black waters that crashed against rocks below. Far enough from civilization that questions weren't asked. Close enough to find occasional travelers whose blood kept them alive. Nora learned quickly that being a vampire was nothing like the stories. The hunger was constant, not overwhelming, but always there, a low hum in her veins. The strength was intoxicating. She'd caught a falling beam with one hand, tossed it aside like kindling. But the cost was everything human she'd been. Food tasted like ash. Water did nothing. And mirrors. She'd smashed the first one she'd looked into, unable to bear seeing nothing reflected back. Every night, she sat at the small wooden table and wrote her father's name in a leather journal Raviel had found for her. Marcus Webb. Then she crossed it out. She'd done this 43 times now. 43 nights of writing and erasing, unable to let go, unable to hold on. You're doing it again, Raviel said from the doorway. Nora didn't look up. It helps me remember. Remember what? That you hate me? That I should, she set down the pen. But I can't. Not anymore. And I don't know if that makes me enlightened or just broken. Raviel moved to stand beside her, looking over her shoulder at the crossed-out names. Maybe it makes you human. In the ways that matter. I'm not human.
No.
But you're not a monster either. She finally looked at him. In 6 weeks, they'd learned to exist around each other, not quite comfortable, not quite enemies. Something undefined. Something that had no name. Do you regret it? She asked. Turning me? Raviel was quiet for a long moment. Every day. And never. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He pulled out a chair and sat across from her. I regret taking your humanity, your choice, your future, but I can't regret that you're alive. Nora's fingers traced the crossed-out name. My father would hate what I've become. My mother would be horrified. Perhaps. Or perhaps they'd understand that survival sometimes means becoming something new. I've fed on people, Raviel. Taken their blood. I'm everything my father hunted. You take only what you need. You leave them alive, with barely a memory of the encounter. You're nothing like what I was, his silver eyes held hers. You're better than I ever was, even as a human. That's not difficult. Despite everything, he smiled. True. A silence settled between them, broken only by the crash of waves below. Finally, Nora spoke again. I've been thinking about what you said. In the monastery. About being a king who thought his throne was worth more than lives. What about it? You can't be a king anymore. The vampire courts are destroyed. Your people are scattered or dead. She met his gaze. So, what are you now? Raviel looked down at his hands, hands that had killed thousands, saved one. I don't know. For 3 centuries, I knew exactly what I was. Now I'm just trying to be less terrible than I was yesterday. That's a low bar. I'm working my way up. Nora almost smiled. Then her expression sobered. I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more vampires. Ever. Her voice was steel. I'm the last one. The last person you damn to this existence. Swear it. Raviel didn't hesitate. I swear. On whatever remains of my soul, I will never create another vampire. The cycle ends with us. Good, she stood, moving to the window. Moonlight painted her silver, hair, skin, eyes. She looked like a ghost. Because I can't forgive you for what you did to me. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I can. Exist beside you. Learn what this life means. Try to find something worth living for beyond revenge and regret. That's more than I deserve. I know, she glanced back at him. But apparently, I'm not very good at giving people what they deserve. I keep choosing mercy instead. Raviel stood and joined her at the window. Together, they looked out at the dark sea, two monsters pretending at humanity. For what it's worth, he said quietly, you saved me long before I saved you. Not from death, from being nothing but a monster. Nora's hand found his in the darkness. Not forgiveness, not love, but connection, understanding. Two broken souls learning to carry their damage together. We're terrible at being monsters, she said. The worst, he agreed. And we'll never be human again.
No.
So, what does that make us? Raviel squeezed her hand gently. Something new. Something the world hasn't seen before. Below them, the sea raged against the cliffs, endless and unforgiving. But inside the cottage called Mercy's End, two creatures who should have been enemies stood together in the darkness. Not redeemed, not forgiven, but alive. And trying, against all odds, to be better than the monsters they'd been made to be.
The end.